Hi, my name's Michelle.
My name is Amy Louise Murray.
Hey guys.
Hello, my name's Jacy.
I'm 18 years old. I come from London and I'm an anorexic.
I'm 19 years old, I'm from New Zealand, and I struggle with bulimia. This week's National Eating Disorder Awareness Week,
And we thought we'd raise a couple of issues probably that there are with eating disorder and hopefully maybe just provide some information. If you need some help or if you know anyone with an eating disorder and you want to try and help them, there's some great information down below in the comments box, so be sure to check that out as well.
we need to start talking about this issue because it does affect so many people. People don't really talk about it. It is so hush-hush, and I think that the longer that it's kept a secret, the more people are just going to be struggling along silently. It's about time that people started speaking up and doing things to change the misconceptions about this disorder.
One of the things is that anorexia, bulimia, any of the eating disorders are lifestyle choices, and that we somehow have chosen to inflict ourselves with such pain that it enables us to become very physically ill as well as mentally ill. And a lot of people just don't understand that an eating disorder affects you mentally.
There have been studies that have, proven that there are genetics that predispose someone to acting upon social pressures and family pressures and things like that.
All of these things that you're doing to your body for your eating disorder, this can really, really affect you mentally. And so it can be really, really difficult to alter your behaviour.
So the myth that I'm busting for Eating Disorder Awareness Week is the myth that eating disorders are only suffered by white, upper middle class teenage girls. Eating disorders do not discriminate. They will take anybody they can get a grip of, and that doesn't matter whether you're white, black, Asian, pink with green spots, male, female, young, old, gay, lesbian, straight, bisexual, Christian, non-Christian, whether you've got any other kind of religion, it doesn't matter. Eating disorders will take anyone.
I don't think people realise that this is a complex mental illness and that it just goes so much deeper than food and wanting to be thin and lose weight. And many of the people in my life who know about this choose not to talk about it, and I think that's just because there is that commonly held idea that people think it's just about attention, and that if they don't talk about it, they're not feeding into that attention seeking drive that all people with eating disorders must have, which is kind of sad because as someone who's struggling, all I want is someone to talk to me about it and to be there for me, and people don't realise that we need people to be there to support us and to not judge us.
To an anorexic or a bulimic, eating is so much more than just food. It's a whole build-up of emotions, your fears, your sense of identity, things that happened in your past, and they all build up, and the person in question will learn to deal with these fears and emotions by controlling their food intake. People learn to cope with things in different ways, as many people will know. I know people who are alcoholics turn to drugs. Just like that, eating disorder sufferers turn to food as a mechanism.
It's estimated that 1 in 5 women suffer from an eating disorder. However, the case of male sufferers is on the rise every year, and women sufferers, particularly with bulimia, both are rising, but it's now estimated that 1 in 15 men have an eating disorder. So it might be a lot more common than you think. The age of sufferers, again, is getting younger and younger, and also cases of older and older people. The most common age of onset is between 15 and 25. However, there are cases as young as 6 years old being reported, and that's getting younger all the time as well. You might think that you don't know anyone with an eating disorder, but the likelihood is that you do, because you can't put a face on an eating disorder.
The myth that I'm going to talk about is that people with eating disorders don't actually have to be thin or dangerously underweight. There may be people walking past you every day and they could look perfectly fine and healthy. They may well be suffering from an eating disorder, and there are people who are overweight with an eating disorder, underweight with eating disorders, and it's also important to remember that you can't measure pain on a scale, and the severity of someone's eating disorder isn't measured on their weight and their appearance. Just like depression, that can be incredibly debilitating in an overweight person or an underweight person, so you really mustn't judge a book by its cover, per se. personally, with my bulimia, I never got to a weight that was dangerously low. People had told me, even to my face, that I didn't look like I had an eating disorder, I didn't look thin. And that was kind of a hard thing to hear, because it's kind of like, well, how do I validate this pain? Because I can't look how I feel inside. And that's how I ended up turning to self-harm, because I couldn't express the way I felt. A hard thing to understand, but it's just that self-harm, because you don't want to project it out onto anyone else and hurt anyone else, and so you turn to yourself and you take it out on yourself.
I think in terms of the misconception that eating disorders are attention seeking, I know in my case and just about every other person I know, that's the very last thing that it is, really. My family, for example, I had that they've only just found out recently, which kind of just shows, if it was an attention seeking thing, wouldn't I be shouting it around the room? I think you'll find with eating disorder sufferers, it's something that we're so ashamed of. At least I'm so ashamed of my bulimia.
People say to me, well, you chose to do this, so you shouldn't be getting help. It has arisen from many complications, and to be honest, it's only now that I'm in treatment that I realise that, where it's come from. Because it took me a long time to realise where my eating disorder had come from. They're complex. Eating disorders are so complex, and they arise from behavioural, emotional, psychological, interpersonal, biological, social factors. Why is anorexia the most life-threatening in mental illness? Why does bulimia completely ruin the inside of your body? Why have people died from bulimia? Why have people died from anorexia?
Eating disorders are dangerous health-wise. Okay, I wasn't thin, but the purging puts a lot of stress on the body. It removes electrolytes, which affect the conductivity of the heart, and so it has been known that people who look absolutely perfectly fine, have a weakened heart, low electrolyte levels, and actually just drop dead from a heart attack. It's that serious. The throat becomes lacerated from the purging and the acid. People with mental illnesses are struggling with food and a battle of food, whether they're restricting or whether they can't stop eating. It's very difficult and consuming. It's traumatic for the person, and people who are overeating, who are bulimic and who are anorexic have an equal amount of difficulty that they face every day.
People tend to judge severity of someone's eating disorder on their weight, which is just so, it makes me angry. There we are. I know that in terms of doctors and things, I found it really hard because I haven't been able to receive the help that I need just because I'm not severely underweight and I'm not, on my deathbed.
It's something that if you're not able to speak about it, it just manifests itself and you can end up completely feeling very alone.
Next time somebody asks you to think about what you might think an eating disorder person looks like, think about the fact that it could be an elderly lady, it could be somebody of 65 years old, it could be a guy, it could be a really young child, it could be a black person, it could be a white person, it could be anybody. Anybody can have an eating disorder.
Hopefully we can start to change things. And I think the only way we can do that is if we stand up ourselves and talk about them, be open and honest about them.
So I challenge you guys, if you know someone who struggles with an eating disorder, or if you struggle with an eating disorder yourself, reach out this week. I think we should start trying to break the silence, to be, a little bit cliche, but the longer that this is all kept a secret, the more people are, like I said, suffering in silence, and that's just the most tragic thing, I think.
It's not your fault if you have an eating disorder, it's not your fault. Don't feel guilty about it. You deserve to get better. You deserve all the help you can get.
If anyone ever wants to talk about eating disorders, I would be more than happy to help if anyone is suffering from those kind of illnesses. And you can find me on Twitter, you can find me on Facebook, you can find me on WordPress.
I hope that was helpful and not just a blabber, and thank you for listening.
Keep raising awareness, guys. Thanks for watching.